So much to do, so much to see, so what's wrong with welcoming you to the Russ Joy Show? I'm Russ Joy. Figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. We have so much to get to in such a tiny amount of time to do it. Why? Well, because today's one of those wonderful days where we go the Russ Joy Show. And then there's a few-hour break as Russ rushes around and gets in traffic on the Schuylkill and the Blue Route en route to a Flyers home game because the Flyers play tonight against the Seattle Kraken. And so in order for all that to work out, sometimes we cut this show a little bit short because we have the Press Row Show tonight, which actually is a probably not terrible place to just remind people, those who are unfamiliar, if you're new to the show somehow, and you found it, I appreciate you tremendously. But in case you are new to the show, you will be aware, unless you're new, that I also host Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. And this is our schedule for the week over on Snow the Goalie. We have Press Row Show at 6:30 tonight. We have Press Row Show on Saturday at 12 o'clock. That's a 12:30 start against the Islanders. So we have a 12 o'clock start for the Press Row Show pregame. And all in the middle of that, on Wednesday night at 6 p.m., we continue our tour of Snow the Goalie Radio over on WBCB. You can check us out over at Chickies and Pete's in Warrington. So set a little notification. Set a little thing on your calendar. Come find us in Warrington at Chickies and Pete's. Let's talk some puck on Wednesday. But again, if you're a Flyers fan, what better place to go than here on the Russ Joy Show, there on Snow the Goalie, all part of Joy Media. Hello. Thank you so much for finding this show. Now, we will get to the Flyers a little bit later on because it appears as though there's been a wee bit of a development and one that I am very excited about. And it has to do with the man who's going to be in net for the Flyers on Monday night. And hopefully I'm not going to jinx it, but I can tell you that merch will go live, I think, tonight over at shop.snowthegoalie.com, and it is based around the man they call Darth Vladar. Now, a lot to get into. Obviously, the number one story in town today is the Wall Street Journal report about Kawhi Leonard. No, it's not that. Okay. By the way, we talked about the Kawhi Leonard thing a while ago, right? The initial stages, I think it was like 2 or 3 episodes into Pablo Torre finds out into that investigation. Wall Street Journal put out their own report today, claiming that a high-ranking executive apparently had said that it meant a lot. It was very important to the Clippers that they get the $48 million deal done with Aspiration. Aspiration executive apparently said that about the Clippers. So that's like, ooh, is that a smoking gun? But a lot of it just feels really weird. And Pablo Torre, who's been kind of like popping the top off this whole thing for weeks now, didn't get a mention until very far down in the story. And it also omitted a whole lot of other things that were reported by Pablo Torre. And now I'm very confused what the editorial and journalistic standards are at the Wall Street Journal. But that is not for today's show. Maybe another day will be, but not today. Of course, we have to get to the number one topic in town, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. Because I don't know if you knew this or not, but the Philadelphia Eagles won a game this weekend. They broke a 2-game losing streak that included a piss-poor, anemic offensive performance against the New York Giants on Thursday Night Football. The Eagles got everything kind of figured out. Kind of, sort of, not really. But we did learn that at least against the Minnesota Vikings, throwing the ball can actually work for your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles. And it seems like in the aftermath of that game, there are some people who are a little bit positive now about young Jalen Hurts, who they were ready to crucify a week ago. Some were ready to jettison into the sun a week ago, 10 days ago, 11 days ago now. I'm not positive. I can't really hear a lot of the haters this afternoon. It's morning in Hawaii, I think. We'll call it morning. But I don't hear a lot of the Hurts haters this week because Jalen Hurts put on a masterclass of passing. Now, did this game absolve Kevin Patullo of all of his sins? No. I was at the Basilica at the Cathedral in Philadelphia for Mass on Sunday. I can tell you that the bishop did not absolve Kevin Patullo of his offensive sins. But maybe those prayers that were put up into heaven, maybe those prayers are the ones that got the passing game fixed, because although it was not perfect, the Eagles put on a hell of a performance against Minnesota. By the time the game was over and all was said and done, Jalen Hurts went 19 of 23 for 326 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And that, my friends, leads to a perfect passer rating. And you might be saying to yourself, but Russ,
If he's 19 of 23, that means 4 of the passes weren't complete. How can it be a perfect game?
Don't ask me. I'm a stupid idiot. Don't count that against me. I don't know. The entire idea of the perfect passer rating seems really dumb to me. It does. Like, if you think about it, if you don't complete a pass, that means something was imperfect. How do you get to a 158.3 passer rating and say 158.3 is a perfect passer rating? I don't know. Somebody could probably explain it. I can't. I'm just a normal guy talking into a normal microphone with a normal backdrop with a normal show on YouTube, Facebook, and X, and wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm just a guy. I can't explain 158.3. But what I can explain is that Jalen Hurts looked every bit of the guy who won the Eagles a Super Bowl and outperformed Patrick Mahomes in 2 Super Bowls. There was a dagger play, a 79-yard bomb to Devontae Smith. And that might be where we actually start, because Devontae Smith apparently, well, he kind of got the feeling that that was going to work. Devontae Smith apparently advocated for that play, advocated for that bomb over the top. It was as if Devontae Smith could see the future. He was like Doctor Strange. He sat down on the sideline. Maybe A.J. Brown's reading a book on one side. Saquon Barkley's reading his new book on the other. Devontae Smith's just sitting there, legs crossed, hands up like this, and he's just seeing every possibility. But he seemed to know that this play call was going to work. And I will also note that this was since confirmed by Saquon Barkley, and I believe by Jordan Mailata this morning, that yes, Devontae Smith did come up saying that this is a play that they should run. And apparently he talked about it with Landon Dickerson, and they were talking about the right coverage and everything, and line assignments and everything. So I want to go out to Devontae Smith, because this to me is very telling, but maybe not for the reason that you think it will be. So let's go out first. Here's Devontae Smith talking about the 79-yard touchdown play. And I just want you to drop your thoughts, but I'm going to tell you exactly what I think this was. All right, here we go. So just simply put, whenever they were in that specific setup, that specific alignment, that specific formation, Devontae noticed where Isaiah Rodgers went, former teammate Isaiah Rodgers, who a lot of people have kind of lamented not being here anymore. And I think even after Devontae burned him, I think we'd probably still take Isaiah Rodgers back here. But Devontae Smith notes that anytime we were in this formation, safety moved, and he kind of knew that there was a chance that a big play could come to fruition. Now, does that speak to the predictability of the Eagles offense? It might. It could. We talked about this last week, that Brian Baldinger kind of did the breakdown of third down play calls. And there were 4 instances against, I think it was the Giants, where you saw mirrored receiver routes on 4 third down play calls in the same game. So there is still a predictability here to this offense. And Devontae Smith is the one who ultimately called for this. Now, he can't go into the huddle and say, hey, Jalen, we're going to run that play. Bitch. No. But he said, this is the play. Mailata talked about it. Apparently Dickerson talked about it. It was brought up, and they decided to run it. And it worked. And so Devontae Smith has a hell of a game. 9 receptions, 183 yards, and a touchdown. And then the other guy that we're typically used to kind of hearing from or about in the aftermath of games, A.J. Brown, has a gigantic third down catch. And it was 3rd and 13 in the 4th quarter. Hurts rolls out, pocket totally collapses. He's about to run himself almost out of bounds. He throws across his body to A.J. Brown for a massive first down. And ultimately, the play that ices the game is a deep play down the left sideline to A.J. Brown, who eventually gets down, and they're able to run out the clock. Minnesota doesn't even have the opportunity to run a play. Oh, and by the way, A.J. Brown had the first touchdown of the game. So kind of a big deal. Kind of, sort of a big deal. And now I'm seeing that nobody saw the... Oh, hold on. This is my fault. I messed up. Maybe I messed up. Could this have been me? Maybe it was. Let's go back. Sorry. Here's Devontae. Real quick. I'm sitting here just like talking about it. standing here really talking about this Devontae clip. Let's just see. Maybe I was an idiot and it's possible. Would this be the first time I've been an idiot? You should be able to see that now. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I didn't hit to put it on the screen before, so that's kind of my fault. It's it's my fault. All right, again, here's Devontae.
Play run at all on that play action?
Yeah, anytime we were in that formation, they were bringing the safety all the way down in the box, putting the other safety on the edge.
So there it is, safeties. Anytime they ran the formation, safety came down into the box, the other safety went out to the edge. Every single time they were in that formation. Again, predictability of the offense, we report, you decide.
So Isaiah was kind of put in a crunch there.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for him. They're playing a certain coverage, and he has a certain responsibility. We're attacking.
So there it is. I was talking about it as if you guys saw it, and then this is my fault. I'm gonna take the L for that one. That's my fault. I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna work better. I'm gonna work harder. I'm gonna do this right. Amadeo was not absolved. He says, "Glad I'm not the only one that fucked up this week." Oh no. No, Amadeo's was much worse. Amadeo over on the Snow the Goalie channel put out Press Row Show post game, and he put Flyers win against the Wild 5-2 in overtime. Now, you don't even have to be a big hockey fan to know that it's sudden death. You can't win 5-2 in overtime. And so most of the comments on the post-game show over on Snow the Goalie were, might want to check that score, sport. And I don't think they even realize this video guy. Don't come after me. I'm just a guy with a big forehead. That's just me. Don't come after me. Amadeo's fault. Anyway, Ford is right here too. Says, good on Devontae for noticing this. Did the coaches notice too, or did Devontae have to tell them? It sounds like Devontae had to tell them. That's what's crazy. That's where, even though I would walk away from that and go, yo, good on Devontae for seeing that. Good on Devontae for figuring out a play call that's going to work. And I do. I think it's great that players are locked in and they're noticing these things. Yo, Kevin Petullo, what the fuck are you up to? Nick Sirianni, fuck are you up to? Why does Devontae Smith have to be the one to figure out the play that's going to work? Why does Devontae Smith have to be the guy to figure out the dagger play? Why does Devontae Smith have to be the one sitting on the sideline to recognize that the coverage is the same every time they're in the same formation? Why is Devontae Smith the one that Saquon Barkley has to confirm and Jordan Mailata has to confirm? Yeah, he was the one who brought it up. Why isn't it the offensive coordinator? Why isn't it the head coach? What are we doing? Nick, what are you doing? Kevin, what are you doing? I don't even know if I blame Sirianni, right? He's not supposed to be a play caller. He's supposed to be the CEO, right? Not the Mercedes Monet CEO, but he's supposed to be the CEO coach who's jumping around to the different player groups, who's jumping around to the offensive, the defensive, special teams, and kind of lets his coordinators do their thing. But like, Kevin Petullo, what are you doing? Because it's already pretty widely known that Kevin Petullo hasn't been able to figure out a way through multiple weeks this season to get dynamic receivers like Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown consistently in places to succeed, positions to succeed. Go back to Andy Reid. I got to do a better job getting these guys in a position to succeed. I don't know what we're doing. Kevin Petullo, what are you doing? Come on, man. Jim Cochran says, come on, that kind of stuff happens all the time. Players take a role in telling the coaches what they're seeing. Good on the coaches for listening. Yes. Here's the thing, though. There's maybe a little bit more of that, right? Let's just say when you're younger, maybe even going into high school, maybe even going into college. What do professional coaching staffs have that a youth league team doesn't have, that a high school team doesn't have, that even some college programs don't have? They have an entire box full of human beings who are watching the play from the bird's eye view, practically, right? They're sitting up nice and high. They're analyzing. They're sending it down to tablets. And then there are position coaches and there are video techs who are running around with tablets the entire time, showing what they are seeing and then showing that to the players. And then maybe the player confirms what the coaches see, or maybe the coaches say to the players, hey, are you seeing this? If so, this way. But again, this isn't like Devontae Smith saying, yeah, I saw this and I went over to Kevin and Kevin was like, I don't know if I want to call that. It's a risky play. No, he apparently is the one who finds it, which again, great. But to, the answer in the question, like, yeah, I want the players to come back with their on the field view and their interpretation of what they're seeing. And then maybe that all those video coaches, right? And all those coaches who are watching from the box, maybe they're able to confirm what the players are seeing on the field. But you can't always take what the players are seeing as gospel because sometimes they're wrong. Anyway, we can look at that and say that's a great moment. And if you want to, you can take a very generous reading of that and say, good on the coaching staff for listening and calling the play. We don't actually know who called that play, but that's okay. Now, another thing that I wanted to get to is something that was noted, and Shil Kapadia is the one who put this together. And as we always do, we like to give credit when a tweet is put out, and it wasn't my tweet, not my tweet. So we're going to go out to Shil Kapadia because Shil does a great job, always has done a great job covering the Philadelphia Eagles and more. Let's go over here to Shil really quick because on that 79-yard touchdown to Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts' 79-yard touchdown to Devontae Smith came on under center play action. According to True Media Sports, the Eagles had 0 passing yards on under center play action in the first 6 weeks of the season. That's bad. Okay. Again, I am not an X's and O's genius. Look at me after all. But 0 passing yards on play action from under center plays through 6 weeks. Yeah, that's bad, very bad. Why is that especially egregious? You have arguably the best running back in the National Football League, the guy who's coming off of what very well could have been the single season record rusher for rushing yards in a season. And Saquon Barkley, you have a guy who did break the record when you include the postseason. You have a guy who's highly regarded as one of, if not the best running backs in the league. And yet the Eagles almost never run the ball or run play action from under center plays. It seemed as a lot of shotgun. And again, it comes back to the predictability of the offense. Cam Jurgens got hurt in this game. And this is like one of those interesting little tidbits, right? So Cam Jurgens comes out of the game and you say to yourself, all right, the Eagles have already had some issues where they've had injuries on the offensive line. We know that Landon Dickerson's had a bunch of injuries. We have seen Lane Johnson exit games at points. Brett Toth comes in, right? He comes in at center for Cam Jurgens when Jurgens gets hurt. And all of a sudden, the play calling changes. And you see Brent Toth snapping the ball to Jalen Hurts from under center because apparently Brett Toth isn't comfortable or as comfortable with shotgun snaps. And so it's almost by happenstance that you end up seeing the dagger play happen, this play action pass from under center. You see it happen because probably Brett Toth is under center. If that's Cam Jurgens and it's a shotgun snap, probably isn't going to work. Now, here's the other thing. This is the other thing that's crazy about it. And I think this part's nuts. So if you take into account that the Eagles haven't really established any reason for you to believe in play action under center, well, that means every time that they do line up under center, chances are it's going to be a run to Saquon Barkley. And even if a lot of it's from shotgun, you're going to just see a lot of shotgun rushing attempts from Saquon Barkley. But you're taking a very valuable aspect and a very valuable element out of a play action pass out of the equation if you don't have any yards to show for that play type, which makes Saquon Barkley's life a hell of a lot more difficult. And I don't remember who it was post-game that said it. I don't remember if it was A.J. Brown. I don't remember if it was Devontae. I don't remember who it was. Might have been Mailata. But one of them said, well, it's good that they hit on that play because at least now it puts it into a defense's mind that lining up under center, it might be a play action pass, which means that the defense can't just load the box to try to stop Saquon Barkley. And I feel like so many of the players are vocally expressing in no uncertain terms why they are frustrated and why this is such a frustrating offense to play in, because the play calling is doo-doo. Now, again, this is a game that Jalen Hurts silenced a lot of doubters, or at least put them on ice for a week. Let's go out to Saquon Barkley, because this is Saquon postgame. And we know Saquon has been very outspoken in his support of Jalen Hurts and vice versa. Like these guys have each other's backs. There's no doubt about that. I want to go out here really quick. Let's go out to Saquon, who's going to just give you his thoughts on Jalen Hurts, the game Jalen Hurts had, and whether or not maybe it should, silence some doubters.
I don't want to say it's expected, but we know the work that he puts in. We know the way that he, how he comes to work, how he leads, and the type of player that he is. And he came with big for us. A perfect passing rating, like we were talking about here. It's amazing. AJ and Smitty came with big with him.
You know what you don't hear in that? So he lauds and compliments Jalen Hurts, mentions the perfect passer rating. when it comes to the doubters, like, what are we talking about? What's one thing that you can notice about Saquon Barkley? Look at his final stats. 18 carries for 44 yards. That's an average of 2.4 yards per rush. No touchdowns. Again, 18 carries, 44 yards. He had one reception on the day. It lost 2 yards. You know what Saquon Barkley's not doing? He's not bitching. He's not complaining. He's not whining. He's not putting up passive-aggressive tweets. He's just doing his job. Now, it would be really easy if Saquon Barkley were a Richard. A Richard. It's a nice shaded way to say dick. If Saquon Barkley were a Richard, you know what he would do? He would complain about his touches. He would complain about the injuries on the offensive line leading to smaller holes or non-existent holes for him to run through. He would complain about the offensive play calling. He would complain about not being put in a position to succeed. And yet, he's not. He's coming off of, again, the chance to rush for the most yards in a regular season in NFL history. And instead of complaining, instead of whining, he's going out and he's doing his job. He's putting his head down and he's getting the job done. And typically, the Eagles will win games when Saquon Barkley is effective and also incorporated. Let's just go through the stats really quick. Saquon Barkley this season. First game of the year against the Cowboys, 18 carries for 60 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 receptions for 24 yards. Against Kansas City, 22 carries for 88 yards, a touchdown, 2 receptions, 6 yards. Against the Rams, 18 carries, 46 yards, no touchdowns, 4 receptions for 9 yards. Tampa Bay, 19 carries, 43 yards, a touchdown, 4 receptions for 31 yards. In the loss against Denver, this is the inexplicable game. 6 carries, only 6 carries for 30 yards, no touchdowns. 3 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown. Loss against the Giants on Thursday Night Football, the one that made everybody lose their damn minds. 12 carries for 58 yards, no touchdowns on the ground. 2 receptions for 9 yards, no touchdowns. And then you have it again. 18 carries, 44 yards, not a massive game. 1 reception, lost 2 yards. Saquon Barkley has probably built up enough gravitas with this team, with this fan base, enough equity with this fan base, that if he wanted to be outspoken, people wouldn't throw him under the bus and back over him and then run him over again and then back over him again. But he's not complaining. He's just getting the job done because I think Saquon Barkley is built like Jalen Hurts, and that is to say, whatever it takes to win. Now, Saquon Barkley does have the difference in all of this, that Saquon Barkley, if he continues to even be a very good running back the rest of his career, he'll be a Hall of Famer. He now has a Super Bowl to show for it. I think Saquon Barkley very much is headed to the Hall of Fame, could be headed to the Hall of Fame. If A.J. Brown were being used the way that he was in the first 6 weeks of the season or the first 4 weeks of the season, and he's not racking up the yards, he's not racking up the receptions, he's not racking up the touchdowns, but he wins the Super Bowl, is A.J. Brown a Hall of Fame receiver? Maybe not. And so maybe there's that little voice in the back of your head that says, I need to get mine because I want to be one of the all-time greats. And A.J. Brown did publicly say part of what motivates him is to be one of the all-time greats. We could go back to the Instagram post from after the Super Bowl where he said like he thought that he would feel this real elation that would stick with him, but it didn't feel like everybody told him it would. And he realized that he likes breaking the opposition. He likes breaking the cornerback who lines up against him. He wants and thrives off of the idea of winning his one-on-one matchup and the chase of the championship. Saquon very clearly is built the same way as Jalen Hurts, and that's a good thing. And you need that because Hurts can't be on his own island by himself. And I do want to find a little bit of positivity, even though the Eagles lost back-to-back games, and they've now kind of pulled the nose up on it. Here are some stats. Just looking at the last few weeks, looking at the teams that the Eagles have beaten. They beat the Cowboys, they beat the Chiefs, they beat the Rams, they beat the Bucks, and they beat the Vikings. The Cowboys have actually played pretty well in spurts this season. They're 3-3-1. The Chiefs are now 4-3. The Rams are 5-2. The Bucks are 5-1. And the Vikings, well, the Vikings are 3-3. But if you look at it, those are all good teams. And I think that Vikings team is in a little bit of a quandary because Carson Wentz clearly isn't the answer. McCarthy clearly wasn't the answer. I don't know what they're going to do. If they had a legitimate starting quarterback right now, would we be talking about an Eagles win today? I don't know. There were plenty of trips that the Vikings had into within the Eagles 20 that could have resulted in points that didn't, or could have resulted in touchdowns and didn't. So I don't know. What I do know is that you have to take advantage of whoever you are lined up against. You have to take advantage of every opportunity that's presented to you. And the Eagles did that on Sunday. Now, the question is whether or not the Eagles are going to be doing that going forward with an old familiar face, because it was reported, and I can't believe we're talking about this, but I guess I can because it seems like it has more smoke than not. There is smoke to the fire, but it does look like a guy who fans really love in this city very well could be coming back into the fold. Adam Schefter reported yesterday, with Zadarius Smith retiring, former Eagles defensive end Brandon Graham is now strongly considering coming out of retirement to sign with Philadelphia. Graham played 15 seasons in Philadelphia and became the longest tenured Eagle in franchise history. The two-time Super Bowl champion could be close to building upon those marks if he and the Eagles can finalize a contract this week, according to sources. Now, I like Brandon Graham a lot. I think Brandon Graham's great. There is a part of me that wonders if Brandon Graham really did want to retire. And there's part of me that thinks that Brandon Graham, having that torn tricep last year, coming back for the Super Bowl, if maybe there's a part of him that feels like there's still unfinished business. And if Brandon Graham is a smart guy, which he is, he probably looks at this Eagles team and says, yeah, this could be another Super Bowl contender. Why wouldn't I want to play? And remember, a year ago, we had this conversation around like Jason Kelce, and it was like, is Kelce really going to look at the success this team is having and say, yeah, I don't want back in? Now, to his credit, Kelce said he was done and he stayed out. Could he have helped the Eagles last year? Sure. If the Eagles' offensive line were to have more injuries, and they have had a lot this year, if the Eagles' offensive line were to have issues, is there a chance that they could talk Jason Kelce out of retirement? I actually think that he's done. Unless Cam Jurgens had like a season-ending injury and this offensive line fell into the void, maybe there's a bit of sentimental heartstring pulling and Jason Kelce comes out of retirement, but I don't see it. Now, Brandon Graham is more interesting because there was a thought over the course of the offseason that he really didn't want to retire and that maybe he felt like he was kind of being nudged in that direction. And some guys like the idea of coming back in and kind of playing the hero. Now, I'm not saying that Brandon Graham is like, oh, now you're going to see how much you're going to struggle without me. I don't mean that. But there is part of me that wonders, does Brandon Graham look at the situation and say, yo, these guys really do stink on the edge? I'm like, maybe the solution is going to be Jahad Campbell on the edge. Whew, excuse me. I don't know. But do I hate the idea of Brandon Graham being back with the Eagles? No. Do I think that it's a great thing if he comes out of retirement? No. They need a longer-term solution to fill that void. And Chris Freed here says, BG needs to stay retired. It will not go well if he tries to come back here. I think it would be okay. But the problem is that if he comes back and he doesn't find success, right? Like if Brandon Graham comes back midway through the season and doesn't look like old BG, is he tarnishing his reputation? Is he tarnishing the way that people are going to look at him? You don't want to be Jason Peters. You don't want to be the guy who didn't know it was time to give it up 3 or 4 years too late. You don't want to be that. Right now, Brandon Graham gets to go out and say, I helped this team win the only 2 Super Bowls in franchise history, and I got to walk away from the game having won a Super Bowl, and that was the pinnacle. Do you really want to come back and chase it again? Maybe he does. Everybody's different. But I'm not sure that's the way to go. Not positive. All right. I want to get to one other thing before we head out, because I told you it's going to be a shorter show today because I got to get down there for Press Row Show. We got some big news. I mean, like massive news. And I know that not everybody thinks it's massive news, but I think it's massive news. Dan Vladar is going to be starting in net tonight for the Philadelphia Flyers. And the reason that is a development is because he has been a revelation for this team. Dan Vladar has been absolutely everything the Flyers have needed in net. He's a guy that when he was brought in was viewed widely as being a backup netminder and not a guy that was going to be able to handle the load. And maybe wasn't even supposed to be a guy to kind of handle that load. That's part of the problem too. But Sam Harrison hasn't done a damn thing to establish himself as the number one starter on this team. And so Vladar will be in net, and it's the first time that we have seen any goalie do anything other than go 50-50 splits, right? So they've alternated starts back and forth this entire time. And tonight, Vladar is going to be in net. So it's the first time that a starter has gone back-to-back in games. So he started on Saturday. He held Minnesota to a single goal after having two really strong performances against the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And I think he earned tonight's start. Let's go out really quickly to Rick Tocchet, because Tocchet obviously is the one who had to make the call. And there was a question. There were a couple of questions around it. We'll probably catch the end of a Charlie O'Connor question here, just about what set himself apart, Vladar, and earned him the back-to-back start. Let's go out to Rick Tocchet. Head coach Rick Tocchet, what do you got to say about Dan Vladar?
Maybe him taking more of the load and it not being strictly 50-50 distribution.
Well, I mean, with the sixth game, so we've rotated. Like I said, he's played well, so he deserves to go in the net. I mean, I don't know to read into. I'm not sure to read into. He's played well. Why not? If it could be flip-flop the other way. You know what I mean? I know what you're saying though, but yeah.
So you don't have Tocchet. Listen, if Tocchet were Pete DeBoer talking about Jake Ottinger in the playoffs last year, he probably would have said, Sam Harrison's given up 4 goals in his starts. Sam Harrison has looked like dog doo-doo. That's why Sam Harrison isn't starting back-to-back games. But Vladar has been really, really good. And again, this doesn't necessarily mean that Vladar is going to continue to play out of his mind for the next month or 2 months or the entire season. But facts don't care about your feelings. And here's what the facts have to say. Sam Harrison has started 2 games this season. He's got an .849 save percentage. He has a goals against average of 3.88. He's been bad. I saw there are people on TikTok. I always like to do the comparison between how people evaluate these performances on TikTok versus Instagram versus YouTube versus Facebook, right? Like all the short form stuff that Amadeo clips up. And there was somebody on TikTok who was like, well, you clearly don't watch the games. Sam Harrison has played very, very well. The defense has let him down. They have the same fucking guys in front of them on the blue line, right? Now, yes, there has been some jostling. Emil Andre has been in and out of the lineup. Yinning has been in. Zamula's been in. Apparently, Zamula's going to start again tonight. God help us all. There isn't some unbelievable blue line that's been installed in front of Dan Vladar in his starts, and then they go out and put a bunch of beer leaguers on the ice in front of Sam Harrison. It's not the case. And yes, there were some injuries to the Panthers. And so it might not be fair to say, oh, yes, Vladar was able to take down the fully healthy Florida Panthers. But Vladar's had a really good season. So I said, save percentage, pretty dreadful, right, with Harrison. So far this season, Dan Vladar, 2-1-0 in 3 starts, including 2 against Florida, and the win over the weekend against the Wild. .934 save percentage, 1.65 goals against. .934 save percentage, 1.65 goals against. In case you're wondering, which you are, a .934 save percentage is tied for the 6th best mark in the National Hockey League. A 1.65 goals against average, well, that, my friends, is good for 4th in the National Hockey League. Now, again, I am not here. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to praise Dan Vladar, but not to anoint him the prince who was promised. But at age 28, and a fresh 28, he turned 28 in August, at 28 years of age, after being a backup in Calgary, who was leaned on in important games down the stretch for the Flames last year, Vladar has grabbed this job by the pucks. He has. And he has stood up to every bit of pressure he's had to face. Now, you could say, Russ, the Flyers don't really have a lot of pressure right now. They're not a cup contender. Many people in the Flyers fan base believe that they suck ass. How in the world could you say that there's pressure on Dan Vladar? Because no matter what, you were still a free agent signing. Because no matter what, there is an expectation that you're going to come to town and succeed, or at least you're going to try to succeed. Maybe you'll succeed better than I did because I just realized that I didn't have the comments up this entire time on the show. It's fine. It's just Monday. It's just fun Monday. But Vladar has done a very nice job in 3 starts. We'll see how he looks tonight against the Kraken. I don't know how he's going to look. No one knows how he's going to look. But if we are to believe that guys show you who they are, Vladar is going to have a tough test tonight. The Kraken enter tonight's game 3-0-2 on the season. They have a point, at least 1 point in every game this season. They are coming off a 4-3 overtime win against the Maple Leafs on Saturday. They have gone to overtime or a shootout in 4 consecutive games. Wow, that's pretty wild. I'm actually looking at it now. They beat the Golden Knights at home in overtime 2 Saturdays ago. They lost in Montreal in overtime last Tuesday. They lost in a shootout 4-3 to the Sens last Thursday, and then they beat the Maple Leafs Saturday in overtime in the battle of Seattle and Toronto that everybody cares about. It's not that one. That other Seattle versus Toronto game I'm actually very hyped for. Kind of sad that it's happening at the same time as the Flyers game tonight, but I'll have an eye on. Vladar has done really well. We'll see how he looks. We'll see how he looks if he does end up becoming the guy who's leaned on as the number 1. Chris Reed, here you go. Says Vladar has never played in more than 30 games in any given NHL season and never had a save percentage at or over 900. Well, let me just point out really quickly that I would take more, and I'd put more stock into that idea of the never played more than 30 games in a season. If he's going to be the guy who ultimately stands out as the number 1, that's where I worry, right? Because we saw Sam Ersson be a very effective backup, but when push came to shove, he's never really been able to find similar success as the starter. Save percentage-wise, incorrect. There was a season that he started 19 games and played in 23 and had a 906 save percentage. Last year, he had an 898 save percentage, pretty damn close to 900. So I would say he's had a few seasons. I mean, 886, 906, 859, 882, 898. I'd say there are a few seasons in there that are close to 900. This very arbitrarily says at or over 900. Well, fine. His second season, his first season overall in Calgary, he did have a save percentage at or over 900. So we are going to try to embrace a little bit of positivity around Darth Vladar, and we are going to believe that he has a chance to keep Seattle in check tonight, but we'll see if it happens. Now, last thing before I head out. There has been some slander going on over on YouTube and on short form, on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and everywhere else. There are people who seem to believe that the 2024-25 Flyers under John Tortorella would have beaten this 2025-2026 Flyers team under Rick Tocchet. Those people are out of their damn minds. I don't know what people are smoking, but whatever it is making them delusional. They are hallucinating. They are losing grip on reality. There is no world in which the final season of Torts' Flyers team beats this team right now under Rick Tocchet. Not a chance in hell. Dan Vladar, the way that he's played through the first few games of this season, is better than any Flyers goalie was a year ago. That includes Sam Ersson and Alexei Kolosov and Ivan Fedotov. You have a much better Sean Couturier right now. You have a much more creative player in Trevor Zegras. And even if you're considering him as a wing instead of as a center, I would say that the combination of Dvorak and Zegras right now are still probably better than Frost and Farabee were a year ago. And even though Jet Lachenko can't really seem to find playing time anywhere other than the fourth line, when he's in, is he at least like pretty passable? Yeah, I'd say he's okay. Is he better than Ryan Poehling in that role? Maybe not. I don't know. Is he better than Scott Laughton in that role? I don't know. I still think that this team is a more talented team. I ultimately think this is going to be a playoff team. If Vladar can play mediocre at best hockey, they're going to make the playoffs. If Sam Ersson can come in and play mediocre hockey, they will make the playoffs. And I saw the question a little bit ago, but what happens if Ersson continues to stink? And what happens if Alexei Kolosov plays really, really well? Torts is asking over on YouTube. Think we'll see Kolosov this year if Ersson keeps playing bad? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, listen, if there's a scenario in which Ersson gets hurt, Kolosov will be up here. Kolosov's had a really good run at the start of the season for the Phantoms, which is great news. It also is kind of maddening because this is exactly where Kolosov needed to be a year ago. He needed to play in the AHL. A whole bunch of reasons that he didn't. That is where he ultimately needed to be a season ago to develop into the guy that it seems like we're seeing now with the Phantoms. If you can get through a season of Kolosov and Bjarnason playing really, really well as a goalie tandem, and then next year, Ersson hits restricted free agency, maybe you just trade his rights away and you have some combination of Kolosov and Vladar at the NHL level. And then maybe you have Bjarnason take the lead down in Lehigh Valley, or maybe Zavragan comes over, or maybe Zavragan's 2 years away. The Flyers actually do look like they have a better overall goalie situation. And it is very, very early. We have to take all of this with a very big grain of salt. But like things feel a little bit better this year. Things feel a little bit less chaotic. Maybe it's because they don't have 3 goalies trying to jockey for time at the NHL level. I don't know. Could be that. K-Dub 1323 says, not sure I trust Vladar, but I know that I definitely do not trust Ersson. I think that's probably fair. Now, look, there are a lot of other comments I wanted to get to. This is partially on me. I just have all these other responsibilities, including tonight. Don't forget, we've got the Press Row Show tonight. We have the Press Row Show on Thursday. Tonight, 6:30. Saturday, 12 o'clock, both at the Xfinity Mobile Arena. All the way up in the balcony level, you go through the glass doors at section 121. Tell them you're going all the way up to the balcony, and you'll see our setup. It's the organist, Mike, and then it's us. Come talk to us at the Press Row Show. And if you're not doing anything on a Wednesday night, or you want to spare your significant other from having to cook dinner for the night, come out to Chickies and Pete's in Warrington on Wednesday at 6 o'clock for Snow the Goalie Radio. We will be out there. You can also call into the show. You can watch it wherever you get your live stream shows, YouTube, Facebook, and X. And then, of course, on the podcast feed over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. And interestingly enough, the same can be said about this show. You can find it in all those places, plus short form stuff on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube Shorts. So do us a favor. Like the videos that you see, share the videos that you see, subscribe, or maybe even follow those accounts across all social media platforms, wherever you get your podcasts, and especially YouTube. I will talk to each and every one of you on Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show, as well as Snow the Goalie Radio at Chickies and Pete's. That's going to be a loaded day. It's going to be fun. And then Saturday, the Press Row Show. But until Wednesday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Talk to each and every one of you very, very soon, maybe even tonight on the Press Row Show. But until then, or at least, if you're not going to watch that, I'll talk to you Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now.